Good morning and welcome to the month 2 video for the Primrose Garden block of the month. Last month we did the center applique, this beautiful wool applique designed by Karen Yaffe. And this month we're going to move on to some of the piece blocks. If you haven't gotten this all done yet, don't panic. The idea was for you to continue kind of stitching on that over the next 4 or 5 months. If you've gotten all of your pieces cut out and fused down, if you've even started some stitching, I think you are in fantastic shape. If you need a little extra help with that, you can always call or email us. But we also have a retreat coming up that I wanted to mention. In September, Karen's going to be teaching a retreat here in Illinois. It's at the Crystal Lake Holiday Inn, which is about 10 minutes from our shop. And that is September 15th through 17th. She'll be doing a wool applique project. We have show and tell. I can show you guys. This is the project that she'll be teaching. It's called Autumn Serenade, and she'll be going over some of her favorite stitches and some of the basics of wool applique. So if you feel like you need a little help before you tackle that, this is a great opportunity for you to learn from Karen. And you can find more information on that on our website. So this month though, we're going to look at the piece block, and it's called Shooting Star, and you can see it in the quilt right here and then up there on the side border as well. We're making 2 matching blocks, and here's what they look like a little closer up. As you can see, it's all half square triangles, so it's a really basic block. So I'm just going to show you my favorite way to make half square triangles this month. Before we go on to the block though, I did want to just give you a few pointers on working with wovens. These are the beautiful fabrics you're going to get this month. I'm going to go ahead and move the camera down so you can see my work surface here. So your kit this month will look like this. You're getting these 4 fabrics and a copy of the month 2 pattern. With wovens, sometimes they fray a little bit more than the cotton fabrics. These particular wovens I find are really nice and don't do a ton of fraying. However, if you come across issues with fraying, I recommend some kind of starch, or I really like to use Best Press. I spray my fabrics and press them before I start working with them. And then I use Best Press as I press each of the units and the block along the way. So that's kind of helpful. Another thing when you're working with wovens is sometimes the 2 sides look different. And there's not necessarily a right or a wrong side, but you may want to choose which side you like and use that consistently throughout the block. For example, I don't know if you can see on this one. On one side, the stripe is a little more spread out, and on the other side, it's just a little tighter. So pick the side that you like and try to use that same side throughout the block. You don't have to use it throughout the quilt. You can use it almost like 2 different fabrics. In another block, you might use it a different way. So those are some pointers for working with wovens, and now we will move on to the block. When you get your directions, the first thing at the top is going to be the cutting, and we're going to do the cutting for both blocks at once. So all of your cutting is going to be done at the same time. You don't have to go back and do it again. The same is true for the piecing. We're going to piece all of the units, all of the half square triangles at once, and then when we get to the back, that's when we'll put the 2 separate blocks together. Your pattern does have colored pictures of all of the pieces, so you should have no problem figuring out which fabric goes where. But it also does list the SKUs here for all of your cutting. And if you remember in month 1, you got this handy dandy table with all the SKUs listed and pictures of the fabrics there as well. So for your cutting, I like to make my half square triangles oversized and trim them down. So I've had you cut the squares a little bit larger, and we are going to be trimming down those half square triangles once we get them together. You are going to be making 3 different colored sets of half square triangles. You'll be making 16 that are red and cream, and that's for the 2 blocks. You'll be making 8 that are cream and light blue, and you'll be making 8 that are cream and that dark blue with the little squares. So the first thing you'll do is you will take all of your cream squares, and you're going to draw a diagonal line on the back of all of those cream squares. I think you're cutting out 32 of them. No, 16. You're going to have 16 light squares, and you're going to draw a diagonal line on the back of all 16 of those. Then you will pair those up with your dark squares, and you're going to put them right sides together. Now again, there's not always a right or wrong side, but the side that you want to see in your quilt, that should go on the inside of this sandwich. So you'll put those right sides together. Then you're going to take them to your sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch on either side of that drawn line so that it looks like so. You can see my seams are right there. Okay. Then you will take your ruler and your rotary cutter, and you're just going to cut on that line that you drew. And you can see how that is then going to open up, and you're going to end up with 2 matching half square triangles. All right, so you'll take them to your ironing board, and I think I had you just press them all to the dark side. So you'll take those all, press them nicely. This is where I would use some best press when I'm doing my pressing here. And then we need to trim them because right now they're a little bit oversized. So when you go to trim them, my favorite ruler for trimming these is the Tucker Trimmer 1 ruler. Let me see if I can show you that a little better. There you go. So this is what that ruler looks like. This is the Tucker Trimmer 1. It trims units that are 1 inch finished all the way up to 6 inch finished. And you can see there's 2 different sides to it. It does all those sizes in 1/2 inch increments. So on one side you have a whole circle, and on the other side there is a half circle. If you're trimming to a whole number, you're going to use the side with the whole circle. If you're trimming to a 1/2 inch increment, you're going to use the side with the half circle. So your pattern tells you that we're trimming these to 2.5 inches because they're 2 inch finished. So I'm going to use the side with the half circle, and I'm going to lay it on top of my half square triangle like so, and I'm just lining up that main diagonal right there. Now one of the things I really like about this ruler is that there are diagonals going in both directions. So for example, if we were doing a 1/4 square triangle or a whole block and we wanted to find the center, we would look right there, and that's the exact center of my block. For half square triangles, all we need to really look at is this main diagonal, that it's matching up with your seam. You also want to make sure before you do any trimming that you've got a little bit extra here outside of that 2.5 inch cut line. Okay, so once you've got it in place, you're going to go ahead and trim up one side and across the top. Okay, then you're going to rotate your unit, and you're going to set it back on the ruler on top of there again. This time I'm looking at that 2.5 inch box, and I'm lining it up with where I just cut, and then my diagonal line is still going right through the center there. And then I'm going to trim the other 2 sides. The table's a little wobbly here. And you end up with a nice, perfect half square triangles. It's 2.5 inches now, and it'll finish to 2 inches in your block. So again, you're making 16 like this, 8 like this, and 8 with the light blue. Once you get all of your half square triangles made, then you are ready to assemble your blocks. And you do have all of the units now to make 2 of your little blocks. So I recommend, and it's written in the pattern, that you lay all of these shapes out into 4 rows. And if you have like a little design board or a spot next to your sewing machine, it's easy to get these twisted around. So it's kind of like a puzzle. You got to get them all laid out just the right way. So lay them all out and then sew them together into your rows. And you can see here on the pattern that I've got it split up into your rows for you. And those little arrows are going to tell you which direction to press in. I basically just had you press even rows one way and odd rows the other. And that way when you put the rows together, your seams will nest really nicely, because you do want to make sure all those points kind of match up there. And then the last step is to sew your 4 rows together. When you sew the rows together, because there were so many points coming together, I did have you press those seams open. So I wanted to just show you a tool that I like to use for pressing seams open, because we're going to do that a lot probably in this quilt. This is called a wool pressing bar, and it has kind of a rounded edge here with a woolly pressing mat on top of it, and then the bottom is this nice wood clapper that you can use to really set your seams. So you take it, and when you want to press a seam open, you just lay that seam on top of here and pretend that we hadn't pressed this yet. It would kind of be all squished together still. You lay it on there, and what it does is it kind of helps to open that seam up, but it also gets all of these other seams out of the way. So when I take my iron can run right across here and get that nice and open. And the woolly part underneath makes it so that it's almost like you're pressing from both sides. So it presses really well. I do use some best press on there. Then you're gonna flip it over. I do a little best press here and one last press from the top. And then you take the wood clapper part, lay that on top to really set the seam. And that's how I get my blocks to be so nice and flat and all of my seams kind of look really nice. Pressing is really important. I think a lot of people don't realize how important that step is when you're making a quilt. So do a good job with your pressing. So once you get those two blocks put together, that's it for this month. One thing I did want to say, just something a little fun you could do. I made my blocks matching and they're identical. But if I were gonna make this again for myself, just for fun, and it wasn't a sample, I might play around with this a little and make my two blocks different. Put all your pieces together, but then if you want to play around, you can assemble one block one way and one block the other way. There's a lot of different things you can do with all these half square triangles. You can mix it up so that your pinwheel looks more like that. You can change this up so that these turn into like flying geese looking things. So if you want to, you can play with that. If that's too much and it makes your head spin, make two matching blocks that look just exactly the same. But that is everything for this month. We just turn this up again so I can say goodbye. And next month we will be moving on. We'll be making two matching blocks again. Next month we're making the zigzag tile. And with that block, I will teach you how to make square and a square units. But that's everything for this month. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the block of the month. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns, you can either email me or give me a call. Thanks so much. Bye guys.